The glass hit the floor before anyone could stop it. Adiz had been balancing 4 cups of steaming hot tea on a tray when the new cleaner, the tall, quiet one who always smelled faintly of expensive cologne, stepped out of the supply closet directly into her path. The tray flipped. The cups shattered. Hot liquid splashed across the pristine marble floor of the executive corridor, and the silence that followed was so sharp it could cut bone. "Are you serious right now?" Adiz snapped, spinning around, her white uniform soaked from the chest down. "Do you know how long it took me to prepare those? That was for the boardroom meeting in 20 minutes. The man blinked. He was holding a mop, the same mop he carried every single morning, and he had the nerve to look almost amused. He pressed his lips together like he was fighting a smile. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was low, calm, infuriatingly calm. "Sorry?" Adiz pointed at the mess. "Sorry doesn't clean this floor. Sorry doesn't replace those cups. Sorry doesn't explain to Mr. Obayenwasu why his boardroom tea isn't ready." He crouched down and began picking up the broken pieces with his bare hands. "Let me help," he said quietly. Adiz stared at him for a moment. There was something strange about this man. He had been working at Zenith Tower for exactly 11 days. He came in early, left late, never gossiped in the break room, and he cleaned with a kind of careful, deliberate focus that felt out of place, like someone who was thinking about something else entirely while his hands worked. She grabbed a rag and knelt beside him. "What's your name?" she demanded. "Emeka," he said. "Emeka, fine. Emeka, when you see someone carrying a tray, you move. You don't materialize out of a supply closet like a ghost." "You're right," he said. "I should have been more careful." She looked at him sideways. Most men argued back. This one just agreed. It was unnerving. "Where did you work before here?" she asked. There was the briefest pause, so brief she almost missed it. "I was between things," he said. Adiz snorted, "Aren't we all?" She had no business noticing anything about Emeka the cleaner. She had enough to think about. Her mother's rent was 3 months behind. Her younger brother Chukwudi was writing WAC exams and needed lesson fees. And she herself was carrying a secret that sat in her chest like a stone. She had a university degree in accounting, a first-class one, gathering dust in a drawer at home in Enugu while she mopped floors in Lagos just to keep food on the table. Zenith Tower was the most prestigious corporate building in Victoria Island. It housed 9 companies across 22 floors, but the crown jewel was on the top 3 floors, Obayenwasu Holdings, one of Nigeria's most powerful conglomerates. The CEO, Emeka Obayenwasu, was a ghost. Nobody on the cleaning staff had ever seen him in person. They heard stories. He was ruthless. He was private. He had fired an entire executive team once because they couldn't explain a 12 million naira discrepancy in 30 seconds. Adiz had been working at Zenith Tower for 7 months. She kept her head down, did her work, and reminded herself every day that this was temporary. Everything was temporary. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the man they called Emeka the cleaner had arrived 11 days ago carrying a very specific question. Was there anyone left in this world who would look at him and see a person? Emeka Tobechukwu Obayenwasu was 34 years old, and he was exhausted in a way that money could not fix. It had started at his cousin Abana's wedding 3 months ago. He had sat at the high table surrounded by people who laughed too loudly at his jokes and agreed too quickly with his opinions, and somewhere between the 4th course and the cutting of the cake, a thought had arrived so clearly it felt like a slap. He had not had a genuine conversation in years. Every woman who approached him knew who he was before she knew anything else about him. Every friendship was seasoned with the flavor of what he could offer. He had given a woman a car once, a woman he genuinely liked, and the next morning she had posted it on Instagram with the caption, "God is faithful." She had not mentioned him. She had not needed to. He was just the means to an end. His friend Dyke, the only person he truly trusted, had laughed when Emeka explained what he wanted to do. "You want to go undercover in your own company," Dyke said, "as a cleaner. For 30 days. Emeka, you own the building. Which is exactly why nobody will expect me to be mopping the floors. Dyke had stared at him for a long moment. And what exactly are you looking for? Emeka had been quiet for a moment before answering. Something real, he said. I don't know what it looks like anymore. I just know I'll recognize it when I find it. He had not expected it to look like a furious woman in a wet uniform lecturing him about tea. If you're loving this story so far, hit that subscribe button right now. We drop new stories every week, and you do not want to miss what happens next. It became a habit somehow, the conversations. It started in the break room on a Wednesday, 12 days after the tea incident. Adiz had brought 2 boiled eggs and a container of white rice from home. Emeka had nothing. He had forgotten to bring lunch, another thing that felt strange about him, like he wasn't used to packing his own food. You didn't bring anything, she asked, looking at him sitting with just a bottle of water. I'll manage, he said. She stared at him for 3 seconds, then she pushed her container toward him. Don't look at me like that, she said when he opened his mouth. It's just rice, eat. He looked at the container, then at her. Why? Because you look like someone who hasn't eaten properly in days, and it's making me uncomfortable. Eat. He ate, and the thing was, he couldn't remember the last time someone had fed him out of simple human concern and not out of a desire to impress him. He ate her rice sitting on a plastic break room chair under fluorescent lights, and it was the best thing he had tasted in months. You have a degree, he said suddenly. Adiz froze. What? The way you talk, the way you organize your words. You sound like someone who went to school for longer than secondary school. She was quiet for a moment. Then, first class, accounting, University of Nigeria in Nsukka. And you're cleaning floors. It wasn't a judgment. He said it the same way you'd state the time, but it landed on her chest anyway. And you're mopping them, she said. We're even. He almost smiled, almost. What happened, he asked. What happened is that life doesn't care about your result. What happened is that my father died owing people money, and the people he owed didn't care that I had a certificate. She picked up her fork and stabbed a piece of egg. I have a family. I take care of them. I don't have time to be proud. Emeka looked at her for a long moment. You should be working upstairs, he said, in the finance department. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. Right, and who is going to give me that chance? You. Are you going to walk me upstairs with your mop and introduce me to the board? He said nothing. She laughed again, softer this time, and took her container back. By week 3, they were eating lunch together every day without either of them formally agreeing to it. It simply happened the way rivers find the sea, without planning, without effort, as if the direction had always been decided. He learned things about her. She had named every plant in the break room. She argued passionately about jollof rice. Lagos jollof versus Ghanaian jollof was, in her words, not even a debate worth having because the answer is obvious. She had a laugh that started quiet and built until it took over her whole face. She talked about her brother Chukwudi with the specific tenderness of someone who had sacrificed deeply for another person and would do it again without hesitation. She learned things about him too, or thought she did. That he was quiet. That he was observant in a way that felt unusual. That he asked questions nobody else asked, and listened to the answers with his whole body. That despite appearing to be a man with very little, he carried himself like someone who had made peace with exactly who he was. You're strange, she told him one afternoon. They were on the 5th floor, both assigned to clean the conference rooms. She was wiping down the long mahogany table and he was doing the windows. I've been called worse, he said. I don't mean it badly. I mean, you don't seem like you belong here. He turned from the window. Where do you think I belong? She thought about it seriously, which he appreciated. She never gave careless answers. Somewhere quiet, she said finally. Somewhere with space to think. You're always thinking about something. Even when you're just mopping, you look like you're solving a problem in your head. Maybe I am, he said. What kind of problem? He looked at her for a moment. The afternoon light was coming through the windows he had just cleaned, and it was falling across her face in a way that made something tighten in his chest. "The kind that doesn't have an obvious solution," he said. She nodded slowly. "Those are the worst kind," she said, "and the most interesting." The trouble started on a Tuesday in week 4. A senior manager named Mr. Fasciola, a broad, pompous man who wore his authority like a suit 2 sizes too big, stopped Adiz in the corridor outside his office. He had a complaint about the way the windows on the 18th floor had been cleaned. They had streaks, he said. It was unacceptable. He used the word unacceptable 4 times in 1 minute. Adiz apologized and said she would fix it immediately. "See that you do," Fasciola said. He was already walking away. "And tell that new cleaner, Emeka or whatever his name is, that he was seen sitting on one of the executive chairs in the 20th floor conference room. That is not acceptable. Those people don't sit in executive chairs." Those people. Adiz felt the heat rise in her neck. "I'll pass the message," she said carefully. "And another thing," Fasciola continued, turning back. "I've noticed you and him are very friendly, too friendly. You're here to work, not to socialize. I need both of you sharp and invisible. That's what cleaners are for." Sharp and invisible. She stared at him long enough that he shifted slightly under her gaze. "Of course, sir," she said. She found Emeka 30 minutes later on the 18th floor. She told him what Fasciola said. She watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "Sharp and invisible," he repeated. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" "Don't do whatever you're thinking about doing. He's a manager. We're cleaners. Just let it go." He looked at her. "Does it not make you angry?" "Of course it makes me angry," she said, with a fierceness that surprised even her. "Every single day something makes me angry, but I have a mother and a brother at home. My anger doesn't pay their bills, so yes, I let it go." She picked up her cleaning cloth. "You should learn to do the same." He was quiet for a long time. "You're stronger than you think," he said finally. "I know exactly how strong I am," she said. "That's the whole problem." Don't go anywhere if this story is hitting different. Smash that like button and subscribe. The best part is coming and you don't want to miss it. It happened on a Friday evening, the last day of Emeka's 4th week. The building had emptied early because of an industry event across town. Adiz was finishing up the 21st floor alone. She hadn't realized how late it was until she looked up and saw the Lagos skyline through the glass wall. Orange and purple, the sun bleeding into the Atlantic, the city laid out below like something precious. She heard footsteps and turned. Emeka was standing at the entrance to the floor, mop in hand, looking at her, looking at the view. "Everyone's gone," she said. "I know." He walked over and stood beside her at the glass. For a moment neither of them spoke. The city hummed below them. "Do you ever think about what your life would have looked like," she said slowly, "if things had gone differently?" "Every day," he said. "Me too." She pressed her palm flat against the cool glass. "I used to have this plan. Graduate, get a job at an audit firm, save money, start my own practice by 30. I had it all mapped out." She laughed softly. "Then my father got sick, then the debt, then Lagos." She shook her head. "The plan is still there in my head, it just has no road anymore." "Roads can be built," Emeka said. She turned to look at him. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't name, something careful and something aching at the same time. "Emeka," she said, "who are you really?" The question hung in the air. He opened his mouth, closed it. Something moved across his face, a decision being made and unmade in the same breath. "Someone who is trying to figure that out," he said finally. She studied him for a long moment, then she turned back to the view. "Aren't we all?" she said softly. They stood there until the sky went dark, side by side, 2 people carrying secrets neither of them was ready to put down. What Emeka had not planned for was Dyke. Dyke arrived at Zenith Tower on a Wednesday morning, grinning, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and he walked directly to the cleaning supply room where Emeka was restocking products. He had told the receptionist he was there to see the CEO. Of course he was received immediately, but on his way up, he had spotted his best friend through the glass wall of the corridor. He detoured. "Brother," Dyke said, pushing open the supply room door, "you look very committed to this madness." "Dyke," Emeka stepped out and closed the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" "I came to check on my investment. You've been down here for almost a month. Have you found your real thing yet?" "Keep your voice down." Dyke looked around. The corridor was empty. "Talk to me. What's happening? There's a board meeting next Thursday and they need you present." "I'll be there." "You'll be there as yourself, because I'm not sure the board will recognize you in that uniform." Dyke looked at him carefully. And then, because he had known Emeka since secondary school and could read him the way other people read billboards, large, obvious, impossible to miss, he said, "There's a woman." Emeka said nothing. "There is a woman," Dyke said again, with enormous satisfaction. "Emeka Obayenwasu, you came down here with your mop and you found yourself a woman." It's complicated." "What's complicated? Tell her who you are." "And then what? Then everything changes. The way she talks to me, the way he stopped. She looks at me like I'm just a person, Dyke. Do you understand how long it's been since anyone looked at me like that?" Dyke was quiet for a moment. His usual levity settled into something gentler. "You have to tell her," he said, "before she finds out another way. Because if she finds out another way, Emeka, there's no coming back from that." Emeka knew he was right. He had known for days. She found out on a Thursday. Not from him. She had been assigned to the 22nd floor, the top floor, the CEO's private office and boardroom, for deep cleaning because the regular cleaning crew was short-staffed. She had never been up there before. She went early, before anyone arrived. The office was extraordinary. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Lagos. A desk so large it looked like a small country, and on the wall behind the desk, surrounded by awards and commendations and framed photographs of men in suits shaking hands, a portrait. A large formal oil portrait. Of Emeka. Not Emeka the cleaner with his mop and his quiet voice and his lunch in her break room. Not the man she had fed rice and argued with about jollof and stood beside watching the sunset. This Emeka was in a suit, sharp, composed. The name plate beneath the portrait read, "Emeka Tobchukwu OBNWOSU, founder and CEO, OBNWOSU Holdings." Adiz stood in front of that portrait for a very long time. She felt many things in rapid succession. Shock first, cold and disorienting, like stepping into freezing water. Then confusion as she tried to fit the two images together. Then slowly, something that burned. Humiliation. She had fed him her rice. She had told him about her father's debt, about her crumbled plan, about the stone in her chest. She had stood beside him in the dark and talked about roads with no directions while he had been. She set down her cleaning cloth very carefully. Then she picked up her bag and walked to the elevator. She found him on the 14th floor. She walked up to him and she said, very quietly so no one else could hear, "I need you to tell me I'm wrong." He looked at her face. He knew immediately. "Adiz, tell me I'm wrong," she said. "Tell me that portrait upstairs is a coincidence. Tell me it's his brother or his cousin or somebody who just happens to look exactly like you." He was quiet. She laughed, but it wasn't her real laugh. It was a broken sound that made his chest hurt. "How long?" she asked. "Almost 30 days." "Almost 30 days," she nodded slowly. "And what was I? The experiment, the charity project. Let's go see how the poor people live, let's eat their rice, let's listen to their sad stories." "No," his voice came out sharper than he intended. "No, Adiz, that is not what this was." "Then what was it?" Her voice cracked. She hated it for cracking. "Because from where I'm standing." You had every chance to tell me the truth and you chose not to. Every single day. You sat across from me and looked me in the eye and I was trying to find something real. He took a step toward her. Do you understand what my life is? Everyone around me performs. Everything is staged. I couldn't remember the last time anyone said something to me that wasn't calculated. And then he stopped, started again. You scolded me about tea. You pushed your food at me and told me not to look at you. You talked about your life like it was just the truth and not a thing you were using to impress me, because you didn't know there was anything to impress. He looked at her directly. You were the first real thing I had found in years. Adiz looked at him for a long, fractured moment. You don't get to use my realness as your experiment, she said. You don't get to make me real for you while you were lying to me every day. Her voice steadied. I have too much dignity for that, Emeka, even in this uniform, especially in this uniform. She walked away. He let her go. Because she was right. If you're still here, you already know this story isn't done. Subscribe if you haven't and drop a comment below. Do you think Adiz should forgive him? Let's talk. The board meeting happened on Thursday, as scheduled. Emeka walked into the 22nd floor boardroom wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Adiz's 6 months of salary. The board members sat up straighter when he entered. The room rearranged itself around him the way rooms always did. He sat at the head of the table and answered their questions and made decisions with the quiet authority that had built an empire. And he felt nothing. Dyke caught him after the meeting in the corridor. She found out, Emeka said before Dyke could speak. I heard the cleaning staff talk. Dyke studied him. How bad? She called it an experiment. He looked out the window at the city. She wasn't wrong. But she was also wrong, Dyke said carefully. Yes, Emeka said, but she doesn't know that yet. Adiz went home that evening and sat on the edge of her bed for a very long time. Her mother called from the kitchen. Dinner was ready. Her brother Chukwudi was at the table practicing WAC past questions and complaining loudly about chemistry. The apartment was small and smelled like egusi soup, and the neighbor's generator was running outside. This was her life. This was real. She picked up her phone and looked at it. No messages. What had she expected? An apology from the CEO of Obayenwasu Holdings via WhatsApp. She almost laughed. But underneath the anger, underneath the humiliation, she kept returning to one uncomfortable truth. The things he had said were not wrong. The version of Emeka she had known in those 30 days had been consistent. The quiet thoughtfulness, the way he listened, the way he had looked at her when she said things she had never said to anyone, none of that had felt like performance. Which made it worse in a way. Because she missed him. She missed the man she thought he was. And she didn't know what to do with the fact that he was also the man he actually was. Adiz, Chukwudi yelled from the dining room, the soup is getting cold. She put her phone down and went to eat. 3 days later, Adiz was called to the HR office. She walked in with her chin up and her hands steady, convinced she was about to be let go. She had been replaying the conversation with Emeka in the corridor, wondering who had seen it, wondering who had reported it, wondering if this was how it ended, fired for confronting a billionaire in his own building. The HR manager, Mrs. Okafor, was a precise woman with reading glasses and a manner that gave nothing away. She gestured to a chair. Miss Adiz Nwafor, she said, opening a folder. First-class graduate, accounting, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Correct. Adiz blinked. Yes. We have an opening in the finance department, junior analyst position. It came through this week. Mrs. Okafor looked at her over her glasses. Someone flagged your file, said your qualifications were being underutilized. The word landed on her like something physical. Who flagged it? Adiz asked. Mrs. Okafor gave her a small, unreadable smile. The recommendation came from the executive level. That's all I can say. The position is yours if you want it. Starting salary. She slid a paper across the desk. Adiz looked at the number. She looked at it for a very long time. It was more than she had made in her entire 7 months at Zenith Tower combined. She looked up at Mrs. Ackerfer. "Is this a charity offer?" "Miss Nwaffer, this is a corporate offer based on your qualifications. Zenith Tower doesn't do charity." Mrs. Ackerfer's voice was firm. "Do you want the job or not?" Adiz sat with it. She thought about her mother's rent, about Chukwudi's lesson fees, about the plan that had no road anymore, and whether this was someone trying to build her one or someone trying to buy her forgiveness. She thought about dignity. "I'll take it," she said, "on one condition." Mrs. Ackerfer raised an eyebrow. "I earn it," Adiz said, "properly. No special treatment, no eyes on me, no interference. I do the work and I'm evaluated like everyone else. If I'm not good enough, you let me go. If I am, I stay on merit." Mrs. Ackerfer looked at her for a moment, then she nodded. "That," she said, almost to herself, "is exactly the kind of person we need in that department." She saw him 2 weeks into her new role. She was in the elevator on her way to the 19th floor when the doors opened on the 22nd and he stepped in. He was in a suit. He was reading something on his phone and he looked up and stopped. She was in a blazer and a pencil skirt and a pair of heels that had cost her a reasonable portion of her first week's salary. She had her hair pinned up. She was holding a portfolio. They stared at each other. The elevator doors closed. "You took the job," he said. "I earned the job," she said. "I know. I want to be clear about something," she said, and her voice was level because she had rehearsed this, had been rehearsing it since she accepted the offer. "I took that position because I am qualified for it and because my family needs the income. Not because of you, not for you." "I know that too," he said. "And if you ever," she stopped, started again. "If this becomes something where I owe you something, or where you think you have something over me because of how I got here, I will walk out of this building so fast." "Adiz," he said her name quietly. "I gave Mrs. Ackerfer your credentials and told her to evaluate you. I did not promise you the job. She hired you because she looked at your results and called your former university to verify them and she wanted you. I opened a door. You walked through it on your own terms." She studied him. "Why?" she asked, "after what I said to you in that corridor?" "Because you were right," he said simply. "About the lying, about the experiment. You were right and you deserved better, and this was the one thing I could actually do." The elevator reached the 19th floor. The doors slid open. She stepped out, then she turned back. "The rice," she said. He looked at her. "When I pushed my food at you, you said it was the best meal you'd had in months." She searched his face. "Was that real, or was that part of the—" "That was the most real thing I had felt in 3 years," he said. The elevator doors began to close. She put her hand out and stopped them. "There's a break room on the 19th floor," she said. "I bring lunch from home every day. It's just jollof rice, but—" She met his eyes. "It's real jollof rice. Lagos recipe, not the imitation." He almost smiled, almost and then fully. It was the first real smile she had ever seen on him. Not the almost smile, not the pressed lips. This one reached everything. "I'll be there at 1, he said. 1, she confirmed. She let the doors close. It did not become a fairy tale overnight. Nothing real ever does. It became something better. It became a story built on clear ground. He came to the break room at 1, and she made him eat before she talked business, and he learned that was just who she was: feed people first, ask questions later. She met Dyke, who was exactly as ridiculous as she had imagined, and she told him directly that if he ever showed up at her workplace unannounced again, she would pour actual mop water on him. Dyke said he liked her immediately. He told her, slowly and in pieces, what his life actually looked like. The weight of it. The loneliness that wealth had built around him like a wall. She listened the way she always listened, fully, without flinching, without softening what she thought, just to spare his feelings. "You built a wall," she said one evening over food in the same break room where it had started. And then you were surprised to find yourself alone inside it. Yes, he said. You could have just talked to people, normally. I didn't know how anymore. She looked at him. You knew how with me. You didn't give me a choice, he said. You just started talking and I couldn't stop listening. She shook her head slowly, but she was smiling. She met his mother, a formidable Igbo woman from Ennui who sized Adiz up in approximately 40 seconds, and then announced that she had been telling Emeka for years to find a woman with sense. She said this directly to Adiz's face, and Adiz said, with equal directness, that sense alone wasn't enough, and she also had a first-class degree, and a plan for where she intended to be in 5 years, and his mother should know that going in. His mother had looked at Emeka and said in Igbo that she approved. Emeka had laughed, his real laugh, the one Adiz had been slowly excavating over weeks, the one that sat deep in his chest and came out rarely but completely. Chukwudi passed his WAEC with distinctions. Adiz paid for his polytechnic application herself, with money she had earned, and she cried in the car on the way home because she had promised her father she would take care of them, and she was keeping that promise. Emeka found out about the results and said nothing, but the next time she came to the office she found a card on her desk that said only, "Your father would be proud." She kept it in the top drawer and looked at it on hard days. The jollof rice debate was never resolved. It became an ongoing argument that they had at least twice a month, with increasing levels of passion and increasingly creative use of evidence, and neither of them was ever going to concede, and both of them knew it. That was fine. Some things are more interesting unresolved. On the morning 6 months later when he asked her, not with a ring in a restaurant, not with a production, but sitting in the break room on the 19th floor eating rice she had brought from home, she looked at him for a long moment and said, "You know I'm going to be difficult." "I know," he said. "And I'm not going to stop having opinions about everything. I'm counting on it. And if you ever keep something from me again, I won't." She was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said. It was the simplest word. It contained everything. He had gone looking for something real. He had found a woman who fed strangers from her own plate, who told the truth even when it cost her, who carried her family like a crown and never once asked to be applauded for it. He had found someone who looked at him, really looked, and saw not the building, not the empire, not the net worth, but the man sitting on a plastic chair eating her rice. She had gone to work one morning with a tray of tea and come home changed. Not because he was a billionaire. Because he had looked at her, really looked, and seen not the uniform, not the floor mop, not the degree gathering dust, but the woman underneath all of it. The woman who was strong and sharp and soft in all the places that mattered. They had found each other in the most ordinary place. In the work, in the lunch, in the telling of the truth. And that was the most extraordinary thing of all. If this story moved you, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment telling us what was your favorite moment, and share this with someone who needs to believe that real things still exist.